1. This chain of events started almost 20 years ago, and involves myself and a notoriously snooty national real estate agency. There is a bit of background leading to the malicious compliance incident, so please bear with me. This all occurred in Queensland, Australia. I once rented a property through an agency from 2004 to 2006. Due to my ex-partner's explosive and violent temper, we had been handed an eviction notice. There was damage to the property that was unfixed at the time we were evicted. Damage that was in the form of fist and hammer-sized holes in walls, etc. Obviously did not receive any of the bond deposit back, as the repair cost more than absorbed the amount. But there was also an added sum of about $1,700 extra to cover the rest of the costs incurred repairing the damage. This amount was forwarded to a debt collections agency. This collection amount was in both of our names, as we had jointly been on the lease agreement. I was not upset at the agency. They were just doing their job by being a good advocate for the owner of the property at this stage. Taking the bond and charging us for the repair was standard and not nasty, vindictive, or overkill in the slightest. My anger came later. Although I must admit I was a bit miffed to be duly held financially responsible for the damage caused by my ex, but due to the nature of the joint lease, not much could be legally done. I was just grateful we had parted ways not long after. A few years post-eviction, I wanted to get my life more organized in many areas, and tie up any loose ends that would impede me moving forward. Clean slate, so to speak. So the debt issue came first. After many phone calls and some paperwork exchange, plus an escalation or two, the debt collection agency finally agreed to split the $1,700 damages bill between the ex and myself. Now I could pay off half and not be held accountable for his portion any longer. This had to be done without his consent, as he refused. I'm unsure as to why, possibly hoping I would pay the whole lot to rebuild my credit rating, or most likely just to be annoying. Once I had paid off my portion of the collector's debt, I thought I was done with the whole business and the black mark against my name. Not so, unfortunately. It turned out that the state I lived in had a blacklist that real estate agencies and lessors could add tenants' names to. It's called the TICA list. All they needed was proof that the tenant had behaved in a bad enough manner regarding renting of a property to warrant being listed. Due to the fact we had been evicted, the damage, and also owed arrears to a debt agency for repairs, we unfortunately qualified. Being on this list made it almost impossible to rent, especially via a real estate agency. After speaking extensively with the RTA, which is a government agency, I found I was definitely eligible to have my name removed from the list, so I started taking action for this to happen. I was able to demonstrate good faith by having paid off half of the damages. It also went in my favor that my partner was abusive, and there was legal evidence to this fact. However, I was told the only way to have my name removed was the real estate agency, so I approached them and asked for them to do so. They were helpful initially. If I was able to show them proof that the debt was settled, they were happy to remove my name. At least 7 years had elapsed by this point, so it was considered punishment enough. At the time, after 5 years, your name is usually removed from the TICA list. However, this company apparently kept tabs on who they had added to the list, and when the person's 5 years expired, they just added them again. Dirty tactics indeed. Obviously I had been re-added. So I provided relevant documents to the agency, and was assured my name would be removed as soon as they located my file. This apparently had been stored away in archives, as much time had passed since I rented with them. I was told this would take a week maximum. All good. So I called a week later and was told to wait another week, still in a kind, helpful, and cordial tone. I called again after that time and was told to wait. You guessed it, another week. And this time I detected a tone of frost in the reply. So I called back more than a week later, just to show patience, and now was spoken to in a very haughty manner. I was informed that my request was bothersome, being so because what I asked was not important and finding my file was a waste of their staff time. They would call me when they got around to it. I expressed how important it was personally, and then heard the magic words almost verbatim.
If you want us to do this so badly, we will only be forced to help you if ordered. Perhaps you should take us to court if you can't be patient. Goodbye.
String me along. Okay, game on. I had a feeling this was all done to avoid removing my name as they found my file, and that they were stalling and wanted me to stay blacklisted, but I wasn't backing down without a fight, and so I took their advice. I filed against them to have the matter seen in a small claims court. It cost me $35, which would be reimbursed by the agency if I won. I didn't have anything to lose, and I wanted them to know that not all people will hold indefinitely or continue to be unjustly punished for longer than fair. I was listed to appear in about 4 days from filing. As soon as I received the court date paperwork, I was suddenly bombarded with phone calls. How dare I take the agency to court when they were working their hardest to find my file and help me? Doing my best to sound apologetic for taking their advice, I thanked them for the suggestion, and it seemed there would now be a time frame, at least, for the matter to be dealt with. On the day of court, I had 3 sheets of paper as my sole evidence. A statement showing that the repair bill had been paid and there was no finances outstanding. A statement from the RTA that I was eligible to have my name taken off the TICA list. And lastly, a document stating that it was at the behest of the real estate agency to remove my name and that they had no real reason not to. Not 1 but 2 agents for the company showed up to court. When it came before the judge, both parties had to give evidence if relevant. I handed in my 3 pages. Seeing them pass the judge a thick folder of paperwork including photos of the property damage was rather amusing, considering they supposedly couldn't find my file when last requested. The judge asked them for a statement. They went on for a few minutes about why I didn't deserve to be removed, and justified their stance with the photos and prior rental history with them. All I had to reply was that I had paid for my share of the damage, that the damage was due to my abusive ex, and that I had made restitution as much as I could regarding the matter, with no money owing. The judge then asked why I had brought it to court. I explained that the company was dragging their feet removing my name when it was a simple matter, and it wasn't necessarily fair to do so, that I had called them repeatedly and waited while they found my so-hard-to-locate paperwork, that it somehow miraculously appeared when convenient. That being on the TICA list was harmful to my future chances at renting, and also that my name had been resubmitted after dropping off the list. The judge queried them why they had added my name again. They stated it was company policy. The judge expressed agreement with my stance. I had been punished enough, had made financial restitution, and now that my file had been located, I was not to be blacklisted anymore. Case decided in my favor. Win. The real estate agency was given 48 hours to submit proof to the court and a copy to myself that I was now off the list. Also, they had to pay for the $35 I spent taking them to court. The pair of agents walked out in a huff and were on the phone out in the hallway immediately after vacating the courtroom. I floated past them as I was on a justice high. As I got to the lifts, I thanked them for coming and their sound advice in recommending court. Also that I was grateful for the bottle of wine they would be buying me, with the $35 I was to be paid back. The look on their face was priceless. 2. Background. A million years ago, my property was part of a large farm. I bought it about 30 years ago, long after the farm was broken up, but before there was any development near it. The piece of land I got was near the back entrance, joined into a dirt road that ran past. The more expensive plots were near the tarred road in the front. I originally bought a large chunk of the land intending to do some farming. That never happened. About 20 years ago, some of the owners got organized. We'll call them the organized owners, and had the area designated as a municipal suburb. The municipality agreed to put in tarred roads, water, and electricity if a certain percentage of the properties were developed. A construction company linked to the went around contacting the owners who had land but no buildings, offering to build houses for us at a very, very reasonable price, contingent on them getting a certain minimum amount of people signing up. While this was happening, one of the approached me and offered to buy half of my property. I agreed, and the money I got for the sale, which was about 4 times what I'd paid for the entire chunk of land 10 years prior, combined with a small loan from the bank, gave me what I needed to pay for a house to be built, and it was a fairly large and nice house too. I stayed in the house for a few years, and my mom moved in with me. I decided to subdivide the property again and build her a house next to mine. but unfortunately an undiagnosed tumor took her before the house could even be started. Well, it was diagnosed, but too late to do anything. Soon after she died, we moved out of the house and started renting it out. About a few weeks before we moved out, the Ooh I'd sold the land to started talking about starting a homeowners association. I wasn't interested and left soon after. About 2 years later, the neighbor Ooh contacted me. There were 2 roads entering the area these days. The original tarred road that was near where the farmhouse had been and was entered from a fairly busy main road, and my dirt road back entrance, which was now a tarred entrance, from a wide but not very busy municipal road. The homeowners association was trying to get the old farm road blocked off to improve security and decrease through traffic, and wanted the road next to my property to be the main and only entrance to the homeowners association community, and they were pressuring me to join. I said no, and I was adamant, and eventually they accepted that, but told me they wanted to have a sign near the road welcoming people to the neighborhood, and the only practical place to put it was on the edge of my property. We came to an agreement whereby they would mow the lawn and pay the equivalent of about $35 a month in exchange for the land they needed. I was very happy with this arrangement, since the property was fairly large and it didn't really cost them anything since they already had a full-time gardening service servicing the homeowners association. This all happened over a decade ago. They eventually got the other main road blocked off, and the homeowners association is paying for a rent-a-cop to be permanently stationed close to my property, as well as mowing my lawn and paying me enough money for takeaways for the family each month. I'm occasionally contacted by members of the homeowners association to get me to sign up, but I'm really not interested. My property has been rented to the same tenant for all these years, and everything there is going well for me. Until about 3 years ago, when someone scared the crap out of my tenant's young daughter by making strange noises and shooting a gun close to her bedroom window 3 or 4 times over about a month. This scared my tenant, and I guess it scared the homeowners association, because they and my tenant contacted me with a proposal. I joined the homeowners association, and they give me exclusions from the homeowners association rules, including exclusions from paying the monthly fees, and in addition they will build a wall around the entire homeowners association neighborhood, including electric fencing and security cameras. They told me they had wanted to do this for a while, but were unwilling to build the wall on property that was not in the homeowners association. I couldn't see the downside, and so agreed. The dishonest dealings. It took a little over a year to build the wall and get everything completed, which is quite fast. And then a month to the day after everything was done, my tenant got a homeowners association warning about his dogs barking. He told them that while the property was in the HOA, it was exempt from the rules. They told him that they had cancelled the exemptions, and that he had 30 days to comply. He contacted me, and I opened some mail I'd gotten from the homeowners association. I'd ignored it since I was supposed to be exempt from the rules and fees. Man, did I get a surprise. They had retroactively cancelled the exemptions and were claiming, 1, that I pay late fees going back over a year, that the easement agreed had been cancelled, and that they were retroactively cancelling it a year back because the homeowners association contract allowed them to use small, unused portions of homeowners association members' land for the common good for free. 3, that I refund the money they had paid for the easement over that period. 4, that I owed them money for the garden service mowing the large lawn, and 5, that I would be fined for each infraction my tenant failed to remedy. This started an expensive process involving lawyers and the court system, that ended with a judge telling me that what the homeowners association had done was mostly legal. They had the right to revoke the exemptions, but they had to give me 30 days' notice. As I was walking to my car, the neighbor Ooh, the one who had bought half my land so many years ago, told me that I was stupid to have refused to join when the HOA started, as I could have been a founder member, whatever that means, and that next time I should be sure to understand the documents I signed before signing them. The malicious compliance. Neighbor Ooh was right. I should have read the contract better. Also, I was interested in what it means to be a founding member. Spoiler, nothing. And so when I got home, I grabbed the HOA contract I'd signed, as well as all the other documentation they had provided me with, and started reading. I was determined to break every rule I could find a loophole to break. I didn't get past the first page. While the street address of the property is used to identify it for all practical purposes, in the city records it has a unique property number that has to be used on legal records. When my mom moved in, I'd subdivided the remaining property but hadn't yet started building on it. And when I gave the HOA the easement all those years ago, it had been on the property I'd sliced off from my mom. And when the HOA set up the contract, they had simply used the property number from the easement. The next afternoon, the neighbor delivered and had me sign for 2 documents. One telling me that my exemptions would expire in 30 days, and one letting me know that the easement would no longer be required after 30 days. I think he was being a bit malicious here because I lived about an hour away from the property, and he drove out himself. The revenge. Exactly 30 days to the hour after the HOA had given me the 30 days notice, I knocked on the neighbor Oo's door. Did I mention he was the president of the HOA? And had him sign for 2 documents. The first was that I planned to build a house on my HOA property, which confused him, and the second was notice that they had 30 days to remove from the property the guard shed, the parts of the electric broom that were on my property, as well as the sign. He tried to engage me, but I ignored him. I climbed into my car and drove off. Early the next morning, I got a call from the HOA lawyer who explained to me that their junk could be staying on my property since it was in an unused part of my land. I explained that I was building a house there and that the land would not be unused anymore. I could hear the smirk as he told me that building a second house to be spiteful would not be accepted by the courts. I sure hope he could hear the smirk in my voice when I told him that the property in question did not have a house and was, in fact, barely large enough for a house to be built and would not be large enough for any extraneous buildings. I then told him to go look up the property in question and call me back. I sliced off just enough to be legal, which was just enough to build a small house. It took them just under 5 days to get back to me. Their lawyer told me that the terms of the easement meant that I could not cancel without their permission, so I emailed him a photo of the document they sent me canceling the easement. That afternoon, neighbor Ooh invited me to lunch, his treat, to discuss the problem. I said, no thanks. He extended the offer again 2 days later, and again I said no thanks. Others of the original Ooh contacted me to try to talk. Some sounded aggressive, some sounded sympathetic, and I said no thanks to each of them. Eventually the lawyer phoned, and asked if we could come to some sort of arrangement. I asked what he had in mind, and he told me that he was prepared to discuss exclusions in exchange for access to my property. So I said no thanks, and please don't call me again. About 9 days before their 30 days was up, I got a call from a different lawyer. He said he wanted to negotiate a surrender, his words, not mine. I agreed to meet him at his office the next day. I'd already had documents drawn up, and the meeting was as simple as me giving him the documents and reading them over. My new easement offer. 1. Included everything offered by the old easement offer. 2. Changed the line mow the lawn to get the property to HOA standards and keep it there, since it was now in the HOA. 3. Would cost him about $500 per month instead of $35. This amount would increase with inflation. The previous contract didn't include that bit. 4. When cancelled, for whatever reason, the HOA would have to pay me a cancellation fee of around $7,500. 5. The contract automatically terminated 30 days after A. Any disciplinary action was taken against me, my tenant, or the property. In quotes, the property. B. Any complaints that were levied by the HOA against the property. C. Any legal action that was taken against the property by anyone in the HOA. 6. That the lawyer who had offered to negotiate the surrender would be allowed to mediate any disputes between us at HOA's expense, and that 7. The HOA would pay all my legal fees if any legal action was taken against me. I deliberately left some insane things in there so that I could appear to concede some points or be negotiated down when the HOA got indignant about the points I actually cared about. The lawyer didn't look happy. He said that my proposals sounded unfair, but that he'd have the HOA president look at them. I reminded him that in 8 days I'd be setting a group of men armed with sledgehammers and anger management issues loose on whatever of theirs was still on my property. That evening, I got an irate call from the HOA president. He told me that he was never going to sign the new contract. I said, okay. He then told me I was charging too much per month and that it should be at the same rate as the previous contract. I pointed out that when I signed the previous contract, the area was under development and that there was at least one other road leading in and out, but that now there was only mine, and besides, mine was now developed with everything they needed. He told me that I was forcing them to sign a document they didn't want to sign. I had told him that he was free to not sign it. He whined about everything he could think of, and then eventually told me I'd be hearing from his lawyer. The next morning, Surrender Lawyer called to ask if I'd be willing to come to their offices to sign the contract. I agreed. When I got there that afternoon, I learned that Surrender Lawyer was not a lawyer, but a paralegal. He handed me the contract and asked me to sign it. He laughed when I told him I'd have to read through it first to make sure nothing was changed, and mumbled something like,
"I'm sure you would."
I read the contract. Nothing had been changed. Not a single thing. And the HOA president had signed it, with the surrender paralegal signing as a witness. I looked at him and said, "Why did he sign this? It was stupid to sign it." And the paralegal looked at me and said, "I started telling him that signing it would be a bad decision, but he told me I wasn't being paid to think or give legal advice, and to shut up. So I shut up." "Do you understand what he signed here?" He looks at me and nods. "I asked him if I should have one of the lawyers look at it before giving it to you, and he told me that we had already billed enough for this, and that he'd sign it and sue you after their easement was safe." This happened about a year and a half ago. It took 6 months for the HOA to find out how screwed they were. They wanted to sue me, but their lawyers explained to them that there was no way to win. Even if the court sided with them, all they would get is the easement contract voided, and they did not think that the court would side with them. The lawyers were adamant about one thing. The HOA could not live with the HOA pays my legal fees if legal action was taken against me, since it didn't limit the people taking legal action against me to the HOA. As worded, the HOA would be forced to pay for my legal fees if anyone took legal action against me. They argued that the courts would probably not enforce that, since the context of this agreement was to do with the HOA. And I told them I was prepared to find out, since the HOA would definitely be the ones taking action against me if they challenged it. I eventually signed an addendum to the contract that said the neighbor Ooh, HOA president, would personally pay all of my legal fees unless he held no position at all in the HOA, and that the HOA would pay all legal fees if the HOA took legal action against me. He resigned from the HOA at the end of that meeting. I politely told him in front of everyone that he should not sign documents unless he understands what he's signing. He didn't look pleased. It came out during the mediation. You cannot imagine how happy the lawyers were that their paralegal was mediating. That without the ability to control access to the HOA neighborhood through the security boom, partially on my property, the HOA had become a gated community a number of years back. The HOA would be in breach of their own articles and would be dissolved. I also learned, should have been obvious to me, that all the security cameras were wired and all terminate in the guardhouse, the guard shed. So basically, it was my way or the end of the HOA. The first mediation was really quite funny. The paralegal looked more than a little glum as we assembled, and he called everyone to order. I suspected that he had been told to work against me, so I took the initiative. I reminded everyone there that I had agreed to let paralegal mediate, but that I had agreed to no arbitration at all. If I didn't feel like the proceedings were fair, I'd leave, and they could go ahead and sue. Paralegal brightened up, and things actually went quite well. I'm writing this after getting home from the last mediation. I built a paddling pool for the neighborhood dogs. As in, I made it myself. I dug a hole, packed it with stone, and added a concrete finish. It was my first attempt, and if I say so myself, it looked, well, terrible. The HOA called for a mediation meeting. What they do now instead of taking official action, I've declined their mediation requests in the past, in which they told me, as nicely as they could, that the paddling pool was an eyesore right at the entrance of the HOA. I asked them to create a list of what needed to be fixed and how it needed to be fixed, and to give it to me at the next meeting. The list was extensive. It basically required the pool to be rebuilt from scratch, I asked them if there was any way to reduce costs on the work they needed to get it up to the HOA standards, and they assured me there was not. I thanked them, pulled out a copy of the agreement where they had agreed to get the property to HOA standards, which I'd highlighted, and handed it to them with the list. I told them the HOA usually preferred if these things were dealt with in 30 days. They started arguing until the mediator reminded them that they could not force me to comply without causing the easement to end. I should mention that their lawyers usually no longer attended these things. They said they would get it done. I also learned a lot about Neighbor Ooh today. 1, I found out that Neighbor Ooh sold his property about 3 months back, and is apparently leaving the country for Australia. 2, I found out that the HOA had successfully sued him for a crapload of money that they had lost to his mismanagement as part of his vendetta against me. 3, I also learned that he had a vendetta against me. I have no idea what I did to upset him. I'm not sure if I will screw with the HOA anymore. I already think I'm so close to breaking them, the only thing stopping them from cancelling the contract is the massive financial loss if they do. I guess a lot depends on how they treat me and my tenants going forward. Also, I do like the monthly payments though, so I'm motivated to play nice. Neighbor Ooh was right though. In the end, you really shouldn't sign documents unless you understand what you're signing. 3. I finally quit my job as a teacher at a small private preschool that has been turning into a dumpster fire for about a year now. As such, I thought I would share my small but satisfying malicious compliance in celebration. So let me explain some context first. This school was my dream job right out of college, as their mission statement aligns with nearly everything I learned in school with current research and whatnot. At first it was great. I got hired during the pandemic, so there were very few kids enrolled at first, and everything was relatively calm. Slowly, however, everything began to unravel. The owner is new to business and does not know how to balance that with the empathy and emotional energy it takes to run a school with small children. I slowly began to see the dollar signs in his eyes. He was catering to rich families and would do anything to keep up the front of a perfect school no matter what. He would disregard the teachers' mental and physical health for the sake of his image. He would hold tight to the money the center made, and despite repeated requests from teachers and director, it was nearly impossible to get him to invest in anything the center needed. Example, more outdoor equipment for the playgrounds, items teachers needed each week for their lessons, etc. This even goes for things that are posing a safety hazard. The infant-toddler playground has a fence lined entirely on the outside by small rocks. The children reach out right through, pick one out, and stick it in their mouths. The teachers spent a lot of time corralling children away from the fence. His only solution was to put up some chicken wire on the outside, but only in certain areas and not even in our main problem area. Apparently, it would have looked horrible to find an alternative decorative option aside from small rocks around his building. Needless to say, he made it difficult to get anything new or needed for the center. Then, we got a new assistant director. She was okay. She was a former teacher promoted to the position after our former AD moved. She had very little admin experience or charisma. Suddenly, with her addition to the team, the admin began to crack down on everything. They started raising the bar on curriculum and classroom standards, on employee behavior and dress code. They would add a new thing to the handbook every week as they discovered new things happening they disliked. We started getting at least 2 emails a week with some other new expectation, 90% a negative thing they wanted to tell us about. Unfortunately, being that the childcare system in America is utter garbage and has a high turnover rate of teachers, our school was perpetually understaffed. This made adhering to new guidelines and expectations hard, especially when they were struggling to get us the time we needed away from our classrooms to fulfill their requirements for lesson planning and such. So here comes the small but satisfying malicious compliance. At one of our trainings, the AD instructed us on a new protocol for our diaper pails.
If your diaper pail fills up before the end of the day, you can't put the bag in the trash can inside the building. It must be taken outside and thrown in the dumpster. But the pail should be big enough to last you all day. So we aren't sure why you guys are emptying them out so often.
The diaper pails they provided us were super small and cheap. The only way they would last all day is if you were throwing away small-sized diapers. The infant room was the only one able to use the pail all day without needing to empty it and replace the bag. My room throws out about 50 to 70 diapers every day, and it would fill up after about 20 of those and need to be emptied. By the time you got to the 2-year-old room, they had large diapered children and could fit maybe one round of diapers in it before they would have to change it out. Most of us had been throwing the diaper bags in the trash can contained within the diapering area. Children would rarely be anywhere near the trash can we used, or if they were, the bag was tied up tight before throwing it in. This was fast and easy and allowed us to get on with our busy and fast-paced day. But no, it posed too much of a biohazard, they said. We teachers suggested that this problem could be fixed if they could get us bigger and nicer diaper pails, or even 2 of them in the older rooms who needed more dirty diaper storage. Most of us had pails that were broken in some way anyway, and the locking system on them was so awful that even my least sneaky 12-month-olds could get into the pail itself easily. I caught them gazing into the abyss of dirty diapers several times. But any time we told the admin about this, they didn't do anything to fix it, aside from just telling us to redirect them. And yet, throwing the bags away in the trash cans they can barely reach was more of a biohazard. AD says,
Okay, we'll see about the pails being replaced, but honestly, just take them out to the dumpster.
We ask, okay, how are we supposed to go out to the dumpster 2 times a day when we are ratio locked on teachers in the classroom? Ratio locked. There are too many children for one teacher to legally be allowed to be alone within the room. So both teachers have to be in the room at all times.
Just call us every time you need it brought out. Someone will step in for you or they can take it out.
All right. So the next day we do just that. We call when we need it taken out. AD says someone will be over soon. But wait, we're understaffed and there's always something going on elsewhere in the building. Hours pass, nobody comes. The diaper garbage stays by the door forgotten, posing more of a biohazard than if it were sitting contained in a garbage can. The other classrooms give up and start looking for other ways to get around the new rule, but my co-teacher and I decide on a different course of action. We take it out ourselves on our lunch break, so co-teacher takes it out on her 11:30 a.m. lunch break to get rid of the large load of morning diapers, and I take it out on my 2 p.m. lunch break to get rid of the lunch and nap diapers. Between getting it out, walking out of the building, opening the heavy gate to the dumpster, throwing it in the dumpster, and walking back, this took an extra 5 minutes or so in our lunchtime. Sometimes it would take longer if we had to help out in the classroom for a few minutes before rushing it out and going on break. Eventually, AD asks us why we're throwing our lunches off by a couple of minutes every day. We explain that we do not want the diaper garbage sitting out in the classroom, but it was hard to get anyone in to allow us that 5 minutes to take care of it.
Oh.
AD decides that this is fine, so we carry on with this. And then one day, I end up having to do the diaper trash after my lunch. I get into the room, grab the bag out of the diaper pail, and co-teacher asks me for some quick help before I take it out. The other teacher who was covering my lunch was outside with the 1 teacher ratioed, allowed for our age group, so co-teacher just needed some help before I went to relieve her of duty. Of course I help her. She also needed a bathroom break, which is not an uncommon request between lunch transitions, since it's sometimes the only time we get to go. Again, it's hard to get people to come cover you for anything in an understaffed center. By the time I finish helping her and get the diaper trash out, it's been 15 minutes over my normal lunchtime. Maybe, normally this wouldn't be a problem. But today, apparently the teacher covering me had been needed back in their home classroom exactly after I got back, because the AD was in that room covering for them while their co-teacher went home, and they, of course, had to do lunches. The AD was supposed to have been helping with a meeting with some parents. They ended up being 15 minutes late. Whoops. Whoopsie. Later, I get called to the office just to talk to the AD. They lecture me, asking me what I was thinking, coming back so late. I explained my situation. Co-teacher had needed help. We hadn't been told anyone was on such a super tight time crunch, Otherwise, we would have tried to be even faster about it. We hadn't meant to screw up anyone's day.
When you come back from your lunch, I don't want you helping your co-teacher. Take out the garbage and come straight to relieve your covering teacher,
AD says. Wow, alright. I nod and get back to my classroom. I explain the conversation to co-teacher. She gets visibly upset about this. I think she may have talked to the director at that point, because a few days later of following the new law of diaper pail garbage disposal, not helping a single soul even when asked, coming back 5 minutes late still for every lunch every day, we get a call to our classroom phone one morning. Co-teacher answers it. When she gets off, she's grinning. That was the AD. We can start throwing the bags in our classroom trash again. Our method is just inconveniencing them too much and taking too much extra time. Oh Lord, I had a good laugh. And this was months ago. From then until the day I left, we never got the new diaper pails that would alleviate the entire problem. Funny how suddenly a biohazard isn't a problem when the solution will cost them time and money. 4. Ages ago, I was a senior developer for a company that revitalized other companies. Think of it as a sort of mini Shark Tank. We would find small businesses that had a great idea but were struggling, and would help them achieve their goals in exchange for a cut. Sometimes this meant providing development or engineering talent to get a product off the ground. Sometimes it meant providing literal capital. Sometimes it meant providing staffing services. Support staff and experienced executives were commonplace needs. We were also a relatively small company, so it wasn't uncommon for our people to have multiple hats. There was one time when I was working as development lead for one client while acting as interim CTO for another client. It could be a bit chaotic, but it paid pretty well. It was a great experience in a wide variety of things I normally wouldn't have had, and was usually pretty fun. So one Friday afternoon, we got a call from a client who was particularly frustrating, a frequent flyer, if you will. They seemed to make every 30-second fix into an insurmountable problem. I'm going to be intentionally vague about the specific industry the client was in. It's a tiny industry. Anyone in their industry would be able to identify them just from the industry and city. This particular call comes in early in the afternoon. They recently moved things around, and now none of their printers work. Obviously, it's mission critical. We do some remote troubleshooting, but can't even get a flicker of life from the device. We spend about an hour or so trying to work through what happened, before discovering that there's really a good reason it won't work. The cable didn't reach where they moved it to, so it wasn't actually plugged in. Well, that's about as stereotypical as an IT problem can get, right? Just plug it in and you'll be good to go, but management says that's not the solution they want. While it's totally possible to run a Cat5 line to the new location, they really wanted wireless since that's the big thing these days. Okay, that's easy to do. Most of our comparably sized clients had switched to wireless networking for parts of their offices, so we already had the right procedures in place. Deployment scripts set up, etc. All they had to do was plug in the device, which could be very easily acquired at any electronics store. And we could remotely handle everything else in a matter of minutes. But no. Management dictates that we absolutely have to have a person on site in the morning to set it up for them. At this point, it's very late afternoon on a Friday, and everyone but me and my boss, the CEO, had gone home for the day. Boss isn't about to lose his weekend, and shit rolls downhill, so I drew the short straw. We reached out to the client to make sure that they knew what they were asking. They were in Chicago. We were several states away in the Midwest, nearing the end of the day on a Friday. If they wanted me to be there by morning, they'd have to pony up for whatever flight we could arrange at short notice. And there was only one flight left that night going from our relatively small airport to Chicago. And the only available seat was in first class. Additionally, it would be taking off in just under 2 hours, meaning I wouldn't have time to get home and pack anything if I was going to make the flight. They reiterated that it was absolutely crucial that I be there in the morning, and they would happily pay for whatever flight was necessary. Additionally, I was told they would have a room pre-booked at the Palmer House, They regularly used the room there for VIPs and such, and I could charge whatever I needed to the room. Further, they said that if I ended up needing to stay longer than the day, they'd reimburse me for any clothing or essentials I had to purchase, since it was so incredibly last minute. Okay, I can live with that. I get to the airport 10 minutes before boarding, make it through the vacant airport, past the TSA checkpoint, and to my gate as they're closing the door. Literally the last person on the last flight of the day. I arrive in Chicago and, shockingly, there is a company car, effectively a limo, literal black car service before Uber was a thing, waiting for me. He takes me to the hotel, as promised, and hands me an envelope before pulling away from the curb. The envelope contains a prepaid debit card and a note saying it has $250 on it for incidentals, but please charge anything I can to the room. Sweet. Was expecting it to be a long weekend in grungy clothes. Checked in and went to bed. The next morning I show up at their office bright and early. I sit around for half of the morning before anyone shows up to let me in. They then show me the new printer area, which is, as expected, well outside of the area of the office which was originally wired for networking, in what was once a break area. I go, yep, that's not going to work with your old wired hub. Run across the street, literally, door to door, was one street apart, to the closest electronics store, pick up their shiny new wireless router, run back to their office, plug it in, and get on the closest computer, run through the 35-second setup, run the script that updates the configs for their quirky, antiquated software, so it picks up the new printers in the office, and tell the owner that it's all set up. He gets this sort of confused look on his face and says, "Already?" I respond by pointing out that we did tell him in advance that we could do it remotely if they were willing to actually plug the device in for us. And he finally realizes how silly the call-out was. But now he feels obligated to save face. I'm instructed that I'm to remain in Chicago until the close of business Monday to ensure there are no issues with the new hardware under actual use. Obviously, it'd be fiscally irresponsible to fly me out twice in a week. I ask for clarification. They're instructing me to stay checked into the fairly expensive hotel and keep billing things to my room through Monday night. Yes. What am I supposed to do with the rest of the weekend? Is there anything else at their local office I can fix while I'm here? No. Go eat a hot dog and play tourist. Just keep the phone handy. And make sure I show up at opening time on Monday. Okay, can do. I go back across the street, pick up a charger for my phone, find a nearby department store, and pick up a few changes of cheap clothes. Stop by the hotel to drop off my purchases, and spend the rest of the weekend playing tourist. Okay, I did a tiny bit of sightseeing and spent most of the time catching up on sleep. But I did ensure to avail myself of room service for every single meal at their expense, before showing up bright and early Monday morning. I sat in their office for the majority of the workday before the owner came in and found me to give me the travel details for my return flight. He even suggested that I'd done a great job. Really, I didn't do anything but plug a device in, and should get a drink before heading to the airport and bill it to the room. As suggested, I went back to the hotel, packed my stuff in my laptop bag, stopped in the bar for a drink. Who knew hotels had $100 plus drinks? And headed to the airport. All told, they shelled out about $1,000 for just the room, probably 2/3 of that in room service fees, several hundred in transportation to and from the airport, not to mention the flights, because they didn't want to walk across the street, pick up the easily obtainable piece of hardware and plug it in. I got a 3.5-day vacation with first-class travel, only one way, halfway across the country for doing just that. 5. Backstory. I was hired on to an assisted living facility as a dietary aide, working 20 hours a week. My duties consisted of making plates, getting drinks, serving meals, dishes, and serving dessert for our 3 cooks who rotated shifts. A weekend, one of the cooks quit, so I was asked to fill in as cook for a little while still being a dietary aide, so no pay raise. Cooks made $5 more an hour, so we added another 10 hours a week. Some days I was the cook and my own aide, which meant I cooked and served food and drinks and dessert, then did all the cleanup as well. A month after I started working for this facility, they hadn't hired a cook yet, and I was still making aid pay, and then the housekeeper decided she needed 1 day off a week, so guess who got volunteered to fill in every Thursday to be an aide? You guessed it, it was me. So I would do my normal work every day but Tuesday I would come in at 5 a.m. for breakfast aid, serve our residents, help clean up, then by 9 a.m. I was off to clean 6 residents' rooms. Most had kitchen, bathroom, bedroom, and a living room. Before 3 p.m. so I could go change in the bathroom and go cook supper, dinner, for the residents and have it ready to serve by no later than 5:30 p.m. Then I'd clean up and go home normally by 8:30 p.m. Yes, that's 15.5 hours every Tuesday. So here we are adding another several hours a week, but we're not done yet. They added showers to me as the nurses didn't want to do them, so every Monday, Wednesday, Friday I had a list of 8 residents that I had to shower between 4 a.m. to 9 a.m., still making dietary aid pay. So by this point I'm working 60 hours a week. So here we are, 4 months in, and I'm working 60 plus hours a week, and they fire one of my cooks and hire a new one I had to train, but had yet to replace the cook I temp replaced. So here is where the shit show starts. I'm teaching my new cook how to tell burgers are done and temping them properly, while being a dietary aid and serving residents. Well, one burger got sent out by the new cook cooked about medium, and all hell broke loose by one of the residents' nurses. Being upset, I freaked out and stated if management would hire more people, I wouldn't have to be in 2 or 3 places at once, and no one would have to worry about food being undercooked, and that maybe the nurse should calmly come talk to me instead of freaking out. She apologized, and the rest of the night went smoothly, until I was informed both of the other cooks were going on vacation, yes, even the new one. And their vacations were going to overlap. One leaves in 3 days for 2 weeks, the other leaving in 5 days for 2 weeks, which leaves me being the only cook for all 3 meals for 14 days straight, plus having to try and keep up with my other responsibilities they laid on me. I was very pissed. Fast forward to 3 days later, while one of the cooks was leaving for vacation. The facility manager was in, and I decided to stop and talk to her about finding extra buddies to help me with housekeeping and showers for 2 weeks. And she agreed she'd have the nurses help me fill in so I could get stuff done. So I head to the kitchen and start my prep for cooking supper and dinner when a note catches my attention.
If you have a problem with management or hiring, take it up with management,
signed the facility manager. So I kept my mouth shut that night, as I was trying to figure out what to say or do. 2 days later, day 5, the day the second cook was on vacation, I came in and cooked and served breakfast and lunch, and after I finished serving lunch, I overheard a few of the nurses complaining about having to do my job for me, and carrying on about the showers that they didn't want to do. This is where I snapped and told them, "You mean doing the job you were hired to do, but complained about it enough management shoved it off on someone who makes $8 less an hour than you do? And you whine because you have to do your job?" I walked to the facility manager's office, handed her my keys, and told her what I said to them, so it couldn't come back on me, then quit on the spot, leaving the manager stumbling over her words as I just left her with no cooks for just shy of 2 weeks, no one to do housekeeping on Tuesdays, and leaving showers to the nurses who didn't want to do them anyways. I was sad when I left my residence, but the rest of them can still piss off. I heard from the residents about how bad the place went to hell when I left, and they watched the nurses scrambling to do meals and other of my tasks. Made my heart sad knowing my residents had to be punished. But oh so happy the nurses had to do my job. Hey everybody, Hellfreezer here, and thank you very much for listening to Revenge is Ice Cream, episode 101. And thank you very much to everybody who allowed me to use and sent in stories for use in this video. If you enjoyed the video, then please do like and subscribe, because I love it when you do that. Oh, also, if you have any stories you'd like to send in, then please do send them along to kingofthecities@gmail.com. That's kingofthecities@gmail.com. You can find that in the description of the video. I should probably add my P.O. box to the description as well. I'll try and remember to do that either this week or next week. Let's see. What was it? Done that. Oh, I think we have a birthday shout out today. I'm sure we had one that was just for the 12th. Yes, we do. Here we go. This one goes to Zach, aka Irrational Sloth, or sometimes known as Reddit Sloth. I think they're known as Reddit Sloth on YouTube, actually. They will be 26 and are doing a 24-hour live stream today. That's the 12th, so that's today. I'm recording this in the past, but it's today. I know how time works. And you can find them on their Twitch stream. That's Twitch TV Irrational Sloth. If you'd like to head on over and wish them a happy birthday. And maybe throw birthday wishes at them. But only birthday wishes. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Zach. Happy birthday to you. Alright, and I think we'll wrap things up there for now. So until next time, thank you very much for listening, and take very good care of yourselves.